The moment Eliza Bennett slid the hidden voice recorder into her pocket before family dinner, her hands trembled not from fear, but from a quiet, steely resolve that had been years in the making. For 2 decades, she had endured their whispered mockery, their casual cruelty disguised as just jokes, all while meticulously documenting every cutting remark, every gaslighting conversation, every time they dismissed her feelings as being too sensitive when she tried to stand up for herself. What will happen when Eliza finally reveals the devastating truth at her father's retirement party, with everyone who ever doubted her watching? If this story touched your heart, please like and subscribe to our channel and share your own experiences. With family who dismissed your feelings in the comments below. Eliza sat cross-legged on her childhood bed, now relegated to the guest room of her parents' sprawling colonial. The voice recorder lay before her like a tiny silver weapon. She pressed play. "Eliza, for God's sake," her father's voice crackled through the speaker. "It was just a joke about your art. Not everything needs to be a federal case." "I put 6 months into that exhibition," her own voice replied, shakier than she remembered. "And that's wonderful, sweetie," her mother interjected, that familiar saccharine tone. "But you've always been so sensitive about criticism. Remember when your third-grade teacher suggested you try sports instead of ballet?" Laughter erupted from her sister Diane and brother-in-law Ted. "You cry for a week?" Diane added. Eliza stopped the recording, her jaw tight. They always did this, transformed her legitimate feelings into childish overreactions, merged present with past until she doubted her own perceptions. She opened her laptop and created a new document, the case against the Bennetts. Then she began to type. Entry number 1, family dinner, June 2nd. Dad dismissed my gallery showing as playing with paint. Mom brought up childhood to invalidate my response. Diane reinforced the narrative. Eliza leaned back against the headboard, mind drifting to when she first recognized something was wrong. She was 7, clutching a drawing of their family, eager to show her father. "Daddy, look," she'd exclaimed. Bouncing into his office, he barely glanced up from his computer. "Not now, Eliza. I'm working on the quarterly reports." But I made us all holding hands in front of our house. Her father had sighed, that heavy exhale she'd come to dread. "Eliza, I've told you not to interrupt me when I'm working." "You're old enough to understand that." Diane never bursts in like this. She remembered the sting of tears, the burning shame. "I just wanted to show you. That's exactly what I'm talking about." He'd cut her off. "You're too sensitive. The world doesn't stop because you drew a picture. Now go find your mother." She'd slunk away, picture crumpled in her small fist. Later that night, she'd overheard her parents in the kitchen. "She's just like your sister, Margaret," her father had said. "Everything's a drama. She outgrow it," her mother had replied. "We just need to toughen her up a bit." But Eliza hadn't outgrown it. Her sensitivity, her ability to feel deeply, to notice subtle shifts in tone and expression, had only sharpened with age. It made her an exceptional artist, attuned to nuances others missed. It also made her vulnerable to the psychological warfare waged around the Bennett dinner table. Returning to the present, Eliza added to her document, note, pattern established in childhood. Dad comparing to Diane, Mom enabling. My perceptiveness labeled as weakness. She reached for the bottom drawer of the nightstand and pulled out a faded blue notebook. Her first journal started at age 12. She flipped through pages of looping handwriting, stopping at an entry from her 13th birthday. May 15th. Mom got me a pink dress for my party, even though I told her I wanted the blue one. When I got upset, she said I was being ungrateful and difficult. Dad said to just wear it to make Mom happy. Diane rolled her eyes and said, "Drama queen," under her breath. I heard her. No one believes me. I feel crazy 20 years later, and nothing had changed. Except now, Eliza wasn't a confused teenager. She was a 33-year-old woman with a successful career as an art curator, living in her own apartment in the city, financially independent. So why did she still allow them to make her feel small? Eliza closed the journal and returned to her laptop. A plan forming. She would record every interaction, catalog every instance of gaslighting and emotional manipulation. She would build a case so irrefutable that even they couldn't deny it. This wasn't about revenge. It was about validation, proving to herself that she wasn't crazy, that her feelings were legitimate, that she deserved respect. Eliza glanced at her phone. 3 missed calls from Marcus, her oldest friend, and the only person who truly saw her family for what they were. She'd call him tomorrow, tell him about the project. For now, she had work to do. She picked up the voice recorder again, checked the battery life, and placed it carefully in her purse. Tomorrow was Sunday brunch, a weekly Bennett family tradition and fertile ground for evidence collection. Let the record show, she whispered to the empty room. The defense rests and the prosecution begins. Eliza arrived at her sister's house for the monthly girls' day her mother insisted upon maintaining. She parked behind Diane's gleaming Tesla, her own modest Prius looking shabby in comparison. Before exiting her car, she slipped the recorder into her jacket pocket and pressed record. Diane's home was a showcase professionally decorated, immaculately maintained, and featured last year in Connecticut Home and Garden. Eliza stepped inside, immediately assaulted by the scent of expensive candles and her mother's perfume. Finally, Diane said, appearing from the kitchen in designer jeans and a cashmere sweater, "Mom's been here for an hour already." "Sorry," Eliza said. It's fine." Diane waved her off. "We're used to it." The subtle dig wasn't lost on Eliza. Used to it. Used to her being late, being difficult, being less in the sunroom. Their mother, Margaret, sat with a mimosa, flipping through a photo album. "There she is. Come see what I found, darling." Eliza sat beside her mother, careful to angle her body so the recorder could pick up their voices. The album was open to Diane's high school graduation. "Look at you two," Margaret cooed. Diane in her valedictorian robes, and you, she paused, studying the teenage Eliza in the photo, hair dyed black, scowling in a dress clearly not of her choosing. "Well, you were going through that phase." That phase had been Eliza discovering her passion for art, for expression outside the Bennett-approved script. "I was 16, Mom," Eliza said. "Hardly a phase." Margaret patted her hand. "Of course, dear. You've always been our creative one." Diane got the business sense, you got the artistic temperament. Translation: Diane was rational, Eliza emotional. Diane was practical, Eliza impractical. The roles assigned to them from childhood, cemented with each comparison. "Speaking of business," Diane interjected, "Dad said you're helping with the website. Redesign for Bennett Financial." That's single quotes, brave of him. "I'm a professional curator with a master's degree," Eliza replied, keeping her voice steady. "I think I can handle a website." "Of course you can," her mother said in that placating tone. "It's just that, well, Bennett Financial has a certain image to maintain. Your taste can be a bit avant-garde." "Modern," Eliza corrected. "The word is modern, Mom, and Dad specifically asked for my help because the current site looks like it was designed in 2005. "Don't get defensive," Diane said. "We're just trying to help." There it was, the familiar twist. Express a concern, get accused of being defensive. Question the narrative, become the problem. "I brought croissants," Eliza said, changing the subject. She had learned long ago that some battles weren't worth fighting as they ate. The conversation turned to Diane's children, 10-year-old twins, both gifted students, both perfectly behaved. "Matthew won the science fair," Diane announced. His project on renewable energy impressed the judges from MIT. "That's wonderful," Margaret beamed. "And Sophia?" "First chair violin again. Her teacher thinks she could apply to Juilliard's pre-college program next year." Margaret clapped her hands together. "Bennett excellence carries on. Eliza, you should come to their recital next month. It might inspire you. Inspire her." As if, at 33, she was still waiting for direction, still needing to learn from Diane's example. "I'd love to," she said, "but I'll be in Chicago for the Midwest Contemporary Art Fair. I'm representing 3 new artists." "Oh." Margaret's disappointment was palpable. "Well, perhaps next time you could reschedule," Diane suggested. "The kids would love to have their aunt there." Eliza bit her tongue. Her career, her obligations, always secondary to Diane's family events. "I'll try," she lied. Later, as Diane showed their mother her newly renovated master bathroom, Eliza slipped into her niece's bedroom. Sophia was at violin practice, but her room revealed a personality Diane rarely mentioned: posters of female scientists alongside musicians, books on astronomy, a small easel in the corner. On the desk lay a sketchbook. Eliza hesitated, then opened it, Page after page of surprisingly sophisticated drawings, faces, hands, abstract patterns. In the margin of one page, Sophia had written, "Don't show Mom. She says art is a hobby, not a career." Eliza's heart clenched. History repeating itself. Another sensitive Bennett, girl being molded to fit the acceptable narrative. She heard footsteps and quickly closed the sketchbook. Snooping? Diane stood in the doorway, one perfect eyebrow raised. Admiring. Eliza corrected. Sophia's quite talented. Something flickered across Diane's face pride. Concern. She gets that from you, I suppose. Let's hope she grows out of it. The words hit Eliza like a slap. Like I should have. Diane sighed. Don't be dramatic. I just meant I know exactly what you meant, Eliza interrupted. The same thing you've always meant. This is why we can't have normal conversations, Diane said, lowering her voice. You twist everything, looking for insults where there aren't any. Not everyone is out to get you, Eliza. In that moment, Eliza wanted to pull out the recorder to play back every subtle dig of the morning. Instead, she smiled tightly. You're right. I'm being too sensitive. The familiar phrase tasted bitter, but she saw the satisfaction in Diane's eyes, another victory, another confirmation of the family mythology. But as Eliza followed her sister back to the sunroom, she touched the recorder in her pocket, evidence collected. The case growing stronger. Eliza sat in the glass-walled conference room of Bennett Financial, laptop open to her presentation on the company's website redesign. Across from her, her father Charles Bennett checked his watch for the third time. In 15 minutes. Let's wrap this up, Eliza, he said. The Thompson account meeting starts in 20 minutes. I'm almost finished, she replied, clicking to the next slide. These are the analytics showing how the current site is underperforming with younger clients. Her father waved his hand dismissively. We don't need younger clients. Our bread and butter is pre-retirement planning for established professionals. But that demographic is aging out, Eliza persisted. If you don't capture the millennial market now... Oh, millennials, her father scoffed, too busy buying avocado toast to invest properly. From the head of the table, Diane laughed. As chief operating officer, a position she'd held since graduating business school, she was their father's right hand and presumptive heir. Dad's right, Diane said. Our client base is loyal because we're traditional. Too modern, and we risk alienating them. Eliza took a deep breath. I've researched this extensively. Firms that modernize their digital presence see a 37% increase in new accounts within the first year. I have the data right here. Eliza, her father interrupted. We appreciate your ... creative input. But this is a financial institution, not an art gallery. Some decisions require business acumen, not artistic instinct. There it was again, the dismissal, the implication that her perspective was somehow less valid because it came wrapped in sensitivity rather than cold calculation. Fine, she conceded, closing her laptop. What parts of the proposal do you want to implement? Charles and Diane exchanged a glance. Actually, Diane said, we've decided to go with Prestige Design Group instead. They have experience with financial institutions. Eliza stared at them. When did you decide this? Last week, her father said, standing. Diane made a compelling case for outsourcing. Last week? Then why have me prepare this presentation at all? Charles adjusted his tie, not meeting her eyes. We wanted to give you a fair hearing, and who knows? They might incorporate some of your ... ideas. Eliza's blood boiled, but she maintained her composure. I see. Well, don't let me keep you from the Thompson meeting. As they filed out, Diane lingered behind. Don't take it personally, she said. Dad's under pressure with the retirement announcement. Coming up. He wants everything perfect. When were you going to tell me about that? Eliza asked. The retirement, I mean. Diane looked surprised. I thought you knew. It's happening at the annual gala in September. Dad's naming his successor. Successor, singular, as if there was only one Bennett daughter qualified to lead. I see, Eliza said again, packing up her materials. Congratulations in advance. Diane had the decency to look uncomfortable. Nothing's official yet. Right. After Diane left, Eliza sat alone in the conference room, processing what had just happened. She'd spent weeks on that presentation, researching industry trends, studying competitor websites, preparing to prove her value to the family business. All for a decision that had already been made. She opened her bag and pulled out the voice recorder. which had been running throughout the meeting. Another entry for her case file. On her way out, she paused at her father's office. The door was ajar, his computer unlocked. A lifetime of propriety made her hesitate, but something stronger, something tired of being overlooked, pushed her. Forward dot, she slipped inside and quickly accessed his email. A search for succession plan yielded immediate results, a folder of correspondence with the company's legal team. She clicked on the most recent message. Charles, attached is the revised succession plan as discussed. Per your instructions, the document names Diane Bennett as sole CEO upon your retirement, with provisions for her to purchase controlling interest in the company over a 5-year period. Regarding Eliza's position, we've drafted the language you requested about maintaining her current consulting arrangement with a modest annual stipend rather than equity participation. Please review and advise if this meets your expectations. Best regards, Jonathan Winters-esque. Eliza's hands shook as she forwarded the email to herself, then carefully marked it unread. She backed out of the office just as voices approached from the hallway. On the drive home, she pulled over twice, once to scream into her hands, once to vomit in a gas station bathroom. It wasn't about the money. It wasn't even about the position. It was about being written off, being seen as incapable of contributing to the family legacy because she processed the world differently than they did. At her apartment, she transcribed the recording from the meeting, then added the forwarded email to her evidence file. The document was growing substantial now, organized by type of manipulation, gaslighting, dismissal, triangulation, infantilization. She stared at her father's words on the screen. Some decisions require business acumen, not artistic instinct. Entire life, they'd used her sensitivity, her greatest strength as an artist and human being, as evidence of her unsuitability for anything important. They trained her to doubt herself, to apologize for her perceptions, to shrink her presence. No. More. She opened a new document and began typing, proposal, Bennett Arts Foundation. If they wouldn't make space for her at the family table, she would build her own. They did what? Marcus's voice rose in indignation, causing several heads to turn in the small CAFE acute. Eliza winced. Keep it down, please. Sorry, he said, leaning closer across the table. But seriously, Liz, they had already hired another firm? That's beyond unprofessional. That's cruel. Marcus Rivera had been Eliza's best friend since college. When they'd bonded over being outsiders in their art history seminar, he as a scholarship student among trust fund kids, she as the financial legacy student who secretly preferred Basquiat to Monet. He was the only person who had met her family and seen through their polished veneer immediately. It gets worse, Eliza said, sliding her phone across the table. Read this. Marcus scanned the forwarded email, his expression darkening. A modest annual stipend. Are they serious? You've contributed to that company for years? Only in ways they could dismiss, Eliza replied. Website design, marketing materials, client communications, the soft stuff. The essential stuff? Marcus corrected. The stuff that actually represents the company to the world. He handed back the phone. So what are you going to do? Eliza stirred her untouched latte. I'm documenting everything. Building a case. A case for what exactly? I don't know yet. Validation? Justice? I just need proof that I'm not crazy, that what they're doing is real. Marcus studied her with concern. I know it's real. You know it's real. What is having it all documented change? She'd asked herself the same question countless times. It changes the narrative. My whole life, they've controlled the story-sensitive Eliza, dramatic Eliza, impractical Eliza. I want evidence that can't be denied. And then what? Family court doesn't exist for adults, Liz. I don't know, she admitted. Maybe I'll confront them. Maybe I'll just have the satisfaction of knowing I wasn't imagining it all. Marcus reached across the table and squeezed her hand. Just be careful, okay? This kind of project can become consuming. And these recordings, are they even legal? Connecticut is a one-party consent state, she said. As long as I'm part of the conversation, I can record it. You've researched this thoroughly, I see. And nothing if not detail-oriented, she said with a small smile. That you are, he hesitated. Can I ask you something? Of course. What would justice look like to you? Best case scenario. Eliza considered the question. What did she want from her family? An apology seemed insufficient after decades of emotional Manipulation, money felt petty. Leadership of the company was never her ambition. I want them to see me, she said finally. Really see me. Not as a problem to be managed or a disappointment to be tolerated, but as a person with value, with gifts that matter. And if they can't do that, then I want to be free of needing them to. Marcus nodded slowly. That's a good answer. They sat in companionable silence for a moment, the cafe buzzing around them. I've been thinking about starting a foundation, she said. The Bennett Arts Foundation. Using my trust fund to support artists like Sophia, your niece, the violin prodigy. She is also an incredible visual artist, but Diane treats it like a distraction, just like my parents did with me. Breaking that cycle, Marcus said. I like it. But won't your family see it as a provocation? Probably. But I'm done making myself smaller to accommodate their narrative. Marcus raised his coffee cup, to standing tall then. She clinked her mug against his, to standing tall. Later, as they walked through the park near her apartment, Eliza played him some of the recordings, her mother's subtle undermining, Diane's condescension, her father's dismissal. Jesus, Marcus muttered after a particularly vicious exchange at a family dinner. How do you not scream at them? Years of practice, she said, and the knowledge that screaming would only reinforce their emotional Eliza storyline. It's so calculated, he said. The way they set you up, then act surprised when you react. His validation loosened something in her chest. Someone else heard it too. She wasn't imagining things. What about your dad's retirement gala? Marcus asked. Are you going? I have to. Absence would be noted and criticized extensively. Want me to come as your +1? I make an excellent human shield. Eliza laughed. Tempting, but no. I need to handle this myself. The big confrontation? She shook her head. I'm not sure yet, but something will happen at that gala. I'm tired of being the family footnote. As they reached her building, Marcus pulled her into a hug. Just remember that whatever validation you're seeking from them, you already have from me, and from anyone who really knows you. I know, she sighed, squeezing him back. That's what makes this possible. After he left, Eliza sat on her balcony, watching the city lights flicker on as dusk descended. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. Don't forget brunch on Sunday. Your father wants to discuss the gala. She typed back, I'll be there, then set the phone aside. The case file was growing, the evidence mounting. But Marcus was right. What was the endgame? What did justice look like when the crime was a lifetime of subtle cruelty, of being made to feel wrong for simply existing as herself? She didn't know yet, but for the first time, she felt powerful rather than powerless. The recorder in her bag was more than a device. It was a declaration that her reality mattered. Thanksgiving at the Bennett house was a production worthy of a Martha Stewart spread. Margaret spent weeks planning the menu. Charles selected wines from his cellar, and Diane coordinated the seating chart with diplomatic precision. This year was especially significant. Charles's retirement announcement had been made public, and the extended family was eager to celebrate his legacy. Eliza arrived early, voice recorder nestled in her dress pocket, a bottle of Cabernet in hand. Her mother greeted her with an air kiss. Darling, you're early, and you've done something different with your hair. Eliza touched her newly shortened bob. Just a trim, Mom. Margaret tilted her head. It's very severe, but I suppose it suits your artistic lifestyle. Translation, it doesn't meet Bennett's standards of femininity. Thanks, Eliza said dryly. Where should I put the wine? Oh, your father has selected the pairings already, but we can add it to the collection. Translation, your contribution is unnecessary, that will be tolerated. In the kitchen. Aunt Patricia and Diane were arranging appetizers, their movements synchronized after years of Bennett holiday choreography. Eliza, Aunt Patricia exclaimed. We were just talking about you. All good things, I hope, Eliza said, forcing brightness into her voice. Of course, Diane replied. I was telling Aunt Patricia about your art foundation idea. Eliza froze. She'd mentioned the foundation exactly once to Marcus, unless. You read my emails, she said flatly. Diane had the grace to flush. I was using your computer to check my work email when you were in the bathroom at Sunday brunch. A document was open. That's an invasion of privacy. Don't be dramatic, Diane said. We're family. Besides, I think it's a lovely idea. Though Dad might have some tax concerns about how you're planning to use your trust fund. Before Eliza could respond, her mother swept in. Girls, not now. The Talbots have arrived. Dinner itself was a masterclass in passive aggression disguised as polite conversation. 18 Bennetts and adjacent relations squeezed around the formal dining table, passing crystal serving dishes of traditional fare while catching up on family news. So, Eliza, Uncle Robert boomed from across the table, still playing with paintbrushes? When are you going to get a real job like your sister? Laughter rippled around the table. Eliza felt her cheeks warm. I curate for 3 major galleries and consult for corporate collections, she said evenly. It's quite real. She's being modest, Charles interjected. Eliza has an eye for unconventional art, very contemporary. The way he said contemporary, like it was a disease. Not everyone can have a head for business, and Patricia added. It's good you found something that suits your temperament, dear. More laughter. Diane shot her a sympathetic look that somehow made it worse. Speaking of business, Charles said, raising his glass, I'd like to toast to the future of Bennett. Financial. As you all know, I'll be stepping down next year, and I couldn't be prouder to pass the torch to someone who embodies the Bennett values of integrity, ambition, and sound judgment, my daughter, Diane. Glasses clinked, congratulations flowed. Eliza took a large swallow of wine. And Eliza, her father continued, almost as an afterthought, will be spearheading our new corporate art initiative, bringing some culture to the offices. It was the first she'd heard of this. Another decision made without her input, presented as a gift. Actually, she said, voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her, I'm launching the Bennett Arts Foundation, independently. Silence fell over the table. What's this? Her father asked, smile fixed. A foundation to support emerging artists, using my portion of the family trust. Charles's expression hardened. We should discuss this privately, Eliza. Why? I thought family business was appropriate Thanksgiving conversation. Eliza, her mother warned. No, I'd like to hear more, Cousin James said. Sounds interesting. It's preliminary, Eliza said, gaining confidence. But I'm focusing on artists from disadvantaged backgrounds, particularly sensitive children whose talents are dismissed by families focused on more practical pursuits. Her father set down his fork with a clink. If you have concerns about how you were raised, I didn't say that, Eliza interrupted. You didn't have to, Diane said. Your implication was clear. Oh, here we go, Uncle Robert muttered. Eliza's feeling slighted again. I'm not, sweetheart, her mother cut in. You've always been so quick to perceive insults where none exist. Remember when you thought Mrs. Abernathy was targeting you in 3rd grade? She was failing me deliberately, Eliza said through gritted teeth. Dad had rejected her mortgage application. See, Margaret turned to the table. Always a conspiracy. Can't we please return to celebrating Dad's retirement? Diane asked. Eliza, not everything has to be about your feelings. Something snapped inside Eliza. 20 years of suppressed responses, of swallowed rebuttals, surged to the surface. My feelings, she said, voice trembling with controlled rage, are actually valid. They've always been valid. But this family has spent my entire life convincing me they're not, that I'm too sensitive, that my perceptions are wrong. Eliza, her father started. No, she cut him off. You've all had decades to talk. I have the floor now. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the voice recorder. What's that? Diane asked. Evidence, Eliza replied. I've been recording our family interactions for months. You've been what? Her father exploded. That's illegal. Aunt Patricia gasped. Actually, it's not. Connecticut is a one-party consent state. Charles pushed back from the table. This is exactly the kind of irrational, vindictive behavior that proves our point. Who records their family secretly? Someone who's been gaslit her entire life, Eliza shot back. I don't even know what that means, her mother said. It means, Eliza said, standing now, that you manipulate reality to make me doubt my own perceptions. It means you dismiss my legitimate concerns as oversensitivity. It means you've created a family narrative where I'm defective for feeling things deeply. This is ridiculous, Diane said. You're ruining Thanksgiving with your drama. There. Eliza pointed at her sister. That's gaslighting. Legitimate emotional expression labeled as drama to delegitimize it. The table had gone utterly silent, relatives frozen between bites, watching the implosion of the Bennett facade. I think, Charles said icily, that you should leave, Eliza. Gladly, she replied, grabbing her purse, but this isn't over. Not by a long shot. As she stormed out, she heard her mother's voice behind her. She's always been highly strung. Just like my sister before the breakdown. Another narrative thread, another way to dismiss her dot in her car, hands shaking too badly to drive, Eliza. Played back the recording. Their voices, so reasonable on the surface, so subtly cruel underneath. The evidence was there undeniable, irrefutable proof that she wasn't crazy. But as tears streamed down her face, Eliza wondered if winning this case would cost her the only family she had. So you revealed the recordings at Thanksgiving dinner? Dr. Amar Shah's voice held no judgment, just calm acknowledgement of fact. Eliza sat in the therapist's earth-toned office, twisting a tissue between her fingers. After 3 years of weekly sessions, this space had become a sanctuary, perhaps. The only place she felt completely seen. I didn't play them, Eliza clarified. I just showed the recorder, told them I'd been documenting everything. And how did that feel in the moment? Powerful, Eliza admitted. Terrifying, like I was finally standing up for myself. And afterward? Like, I've made a terrible mistake. She sighed. They haven't spoken to me in 2 weeks. Mom texts about logistics, Christmas plans, mostly, but nothing substantive. Dr. Shah nodded. You disrupted the family system. That often triggers strong reactions. They think I'm unhinged. Dad called it vindictive and irrational. What do you think it is? Eliza considered this. Self-preservation, maybe even self-advocacy. Those sound like healthy motivations, Dr. Shah observed. You've spent years in this room exploring how your family dynamics have affected your sense of self. This documentation project, it's not about hurting them. It's about validating your reality. But is it normal? Eliza asked. Recording conversations, keeping files, Sometimes I worry they're right. That I'm overreacting. Dr. Shah set down her notepad. Let's talk about the concept of the highly sensitive person. Had you heard this term before? Eliza shook her head. It's a personality trait found in about 20% of the population. HSPs process sensory data more deeply and thoroughly than others. They notice subtleties, they feel emotions, both their own and others, more intensely, and they're often deeply empathetic. That sounds like you, Dr. Shah finished with a smile. From what you've shared over our years working together, I believe you're a highly sensitive person. And your family has consistently pathologized this trait rather than recognizing its value. Eliza felt a weight lifting of validation she hadn't realized she'd been seeking. So I'm not defective. Quite the opposite. HSPs often make exceptional artists, therapists, writers' roles that require depth of perception and emotional intelligence. Your sensitivity is a gift, Eliza. It's made you the perceptive, compassionate person sitting before me. Tears welled in Eliza's eyes. My whole life, they've made me feel broken. Systems often reject what they don't understand, Dr. Shah said gently. Your family created a narrative where sensitivity equals weakness, where emotional depth is labeled dysfunction. Your documentation project challenges that narrative. What do I do now? Eliza asked. Play the recordings for them? Force them to listen? What outcome are you hoping for? Eliza considered this. I want them to acknowledge what they've done. I want them to see me, really see me for who I am. That's a reasonable desire, Dr. Shah said. But I want you to prepare yourself for the possibility that they may not be capable of giving you that acknowledgement, at least not right away. People deeply invested in a family narrative often resist evidence that contradicts it. So this has all been pointless? The familiar deflation, the sense of futility. Not at all, Dr. Shah said firmly. This process has been valuable for you, regardless of their reaction. You're validating your own experiences, standing in your truth. That's immensely powerful. Eliza nodded slowly. It has felt clarifying. Listening to the recordings, I keep having these moments where I think, yes, that really happened, and not imagining things. Exactly. You're reclaiming your reality from those who've tried to distort it. But where does it end? Eliza asked. I can't record them forever. Dr. Shah leaned forward. The goal isn't to accumulate an endless archive of evidence. It's to reach a point where you no longer need external validation of your perceptions, where you trust yourself enough to know what's real. And if they never acknowledge it, then you may need to accept that limitation and decide what kind of relationship is possible within those constraints. The thought sent a chill through Eliza. You mean I might have to let them go? Or create new boundaries, Dr. Shaw suggested. Many adult children find ways to maintain family connections while protecting themselves from harmful dynamics. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of this possibility settling between them. There's something else, Eliza said finally. My niece Sophia, she's sensitive to artistic, perceptive, and I see Diane doing to her what my parents did to me. That concerns you. It terrifies me, history repeating itself. Another sensitive girl being taught to doubt herself, to hide her gifts. Dr. Shaw nodded thoughtfully. Perhaps this is another dimension of your journey, not just healing yourself, but helping prevent the same wounds in the next generation. The foundation, Eliza murmured. The Bennett Arts Foundation. It could be for kids like Sophia. Like Emmy. A way to transform pain into purpose, Dr. Shaw observed. Very powerful. As their session ended, Dr. Shaw handed Eliza a book from her shelf. Some reading on high sensitivity. I think you'll find it illuminating. Eliza studied the cover. The highly sensitive person. How to thrive when the world overwhelms you. Thank you, she said, clutching it like a lifeline. One more thing, Dr. Shaw said as Eliza reached the door. Your sensitivity, your ability to feel deeply, to notice what others miss, those aren't weaknesses to overcome. They're superpowers to embrace. Driving home, Eliza felt something shift inside her, a reframing of her life story. Not the saga of a defective daughter, but the journey of a highly sensitive person navigating a world that often misunderstood her gifts. She wasn't broken. She'd never been broken, and the knowledge filled her with a quiet, steely strength more powerful than any voice recording could capture. The annual Bennett summer picnic at Aunt Patricia's lakeside property was a tradition Eliza had dreaded since childhood. This year, after the Thanksgiving debacle, her anxiety reached new heights. She'd considered skipping it altogether, but Dr. Shaw had encouraged her to test the new boundaries they'd discussed. Remember, Dr. Shaw had said, you're not responsible for their reactions, just for how you respond to them. Eliza parked her car at the end of the long line of luxury vehicles and checked her reflection in the rearview mirror. Her new copper-toned hair color's spontaneous decision last week felt like armor, a visible declaration of change. She'd left the voice recorder at home. Today wasn't about collecting evidence. It was about observing the extended family dynamics with fresh eyes. Aunt Patricia spotted her first. Eliza, you came. Her smile seemed genuine but cautious, and you single quotes changed your hair. I needed something different, Eliza replied. Well, it's certainly different. Classic Aunt Patricia, the compliment wrapped in subtle disapproval. Thank you, Eliza said, refusing to apologize or explain. The food looks amazing. The property buzzed with Bennett relatives from both sides of the family. Eliza's maternal cousins, the Whitmores, clustered near the bar. The Bennett cousins organized lawn games for the children. Her parents held court on the deck, glasses of Chardonnay in hand, while Diane and Ted supervised their twins at the lake's edge. Eliza grabbed a plate and found a quiet spot at a picnic table, observing rather than participating. From this vantage point, patterns emerged that she'd never fully registered before: the way Aunt Patricia mirrored her mother's dismissive hand gestures, how Uncle Robert cut off his wife mid-sentence, just as Charles did to Margaret. The Bennett cousins competing for attention with increasingly extravagant stories of professional success. This seat taken, Eliza looked up to find her cousin Hannah standing beside her, plate in hand. Hannah was Patricia's youngest daughter, an environmental lawyer who rarely attended family gatherings due to her work abroad. Please, Eliza said, gesturing to the empty bench. Hannah sat, surveying the family tableau before them. So, she said quietly, you're the new family pariah. Congratulations. It was getting lonely in the black sheep pen. Eliza laughed despite herself. The recording thing got around, I guess. Are you kidding? It's all anyone's talked about for months. Did you hear what Eliza did? So vindictive. So unstable. Hannah's impression of Aunt Patricia was uncanny. And, what do you think? Eliza asked. Hannah shrugged. I think this family has a toxic way of handling anyone who doesn't fit the mold. I've been on the receiving end enough times to recognize it. Because of your environmental work. That, and refusing to marry Jonathan Schuyler from the yacht club. Hannah rolled her eyes. Plus the whole bisexual thing really threw Mom for her. A loop? Eliza stared at her. I didn't know you were bi. Exactly, because no one talks about it. It's all polite fiction and performative perfection. Hannah took a bite of potato salad. So yeah, I get why you started recording them. Sometimes you need proof that you're not the crazy one. Eliza felt a wave of kinship with her cousin. You're the first family member to say that to me. Well, most of them are too invested in maintaining the system that works for them. Across the lawn, Uncle Robert was loudly holding forth about Charles's retirement. Bennett Financial couldn't be in better hands with Diane taking over. The Bennett business acumen skips a generation sometimes, but it always surfaces where it counts. Several relatives laughed, glancing not so subtly toward Eliza. Hannah snorted. Subtle. They've always been like this, Eliza said. I just didn't have the language for it before. Gaslighting, Hannah supplied. Emotional manipulation. Garden variety narcissism wrapped in country club memberships and monogrammed towels. Eliza studied her cousin with new appreciation. How did you get so clear-eyed about it? Distance helps, and therapy. Lots of therapy. Hannah lowered her voice. Also, I may have started recording them years ago. You what? Hannah grinned. Voice memos app. Holiday dinners, mostly. I use them for reality checks when I start doubting my memories. She shrugged. You're just the first one with the guts to tell them about it. Eliza felt a surge of validation. I thought I was losing my mind. Classic gaslight symptom, Hannah said. For what it's worth, I've always thought you were the sanest one in this circus. Even when I was having my artistic temperament moments. Especially then, you were the only one being authentic. They ate in companionable silence for a moment, watching the family tableau. Your niece is talented, Hannah observed, nodding. Toward Sophia, who sat apart from the other children, sketching in a notebook. I saw her work at the school art show last spring. She reminds me of you at that age. Diane treats it like a phase to be outgrown, Eliza said. Of course she does. Can't have another sensitive Bennett running around perceiving things accurately. Hannah's sarcasm was biting but affectionate. You should mentor her? I'm trying. Diane limits our time together. Find ways around that, Hannah advised. She needs someone who sees her clearly. The conversation shifted as Cousin James approached. With his wife. Unlike the awkward, stilted interactions Eliza had come to expect, these moments with Hannah felt genuine a rarity in Bennett gatherings. Later, as the day wound down, Eliza found herself cornered by Aunt Patricia near the dessert table. Darling, we haven't had a chance to catch up, her aunt said, voice honeyed with forced warmth. How are you feeling these days? The emphasis on feeling was unmistakable, a reference to Eliza's supposed emotional instability. I'm well, thank you, Eliza replied evenly. Very centered, actually. Good, good. We were all so concerned after ... episode at Thanksgiving. It wasn't an episode, Aunt Patricia. It was a boundary. Her aunt blinked, thrown off script. Well, we just hope you're taking care of yourself. Your mother mentioned. You might be seeing someone. A doctor? A therapist, Eliza corrected. Dr. Shaw is excellent. In fact, she's helped me understand some patterns in our family dynamics that have been quite damaging. Aunt Patricia's smile tightened. Families are complicated, dear. No need to make everything into a drama. There it was, the dismissal, the minimization. Actually, Eliza said calmly, acknowledging unhealthy patterns isn't dramatic. It's necessary for growth. She walked away before her aunt could respond. Feeling Hannah's approving gaze from across the lawn by day's end, Eliza had identified at least a dozen instances of gaslighting, dismissal, and manipulation among various family members, not just directed at her, but at anyone who disrupted the carefully maintained Bennett narrative of perfection. She hadn't needed a recorder to see it this time. The patterns were clear, the dynamics transparent. As she said her goodbyes, Hannah slipped a business card into her hand. My therapist, she whispered. She specializes in family systems. Call her if you need reinforcements. Eliza hugged her cousin fiercely. Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for being brave enough to be seen, Hannah replied. Eliza sat in her father's study, surrounded by the artifacts of Charles Bennett's career-framed accolades, photos with politicians and business leaders, the heavy mahogany desk that had intimidated her since childhood. He'd summoned her for a private conversation a week before his retirement gala, and she'd agreed despite her misgivings. Charles entered precisely on time, as always. He'd aged noticeably since Thanksgiving deeper. Lines around his eyes, a slight stoop to his once ramrod posture. "Thank you for coming," he said, settling behind his desk. The power position, maintaining the hierarchy even in what should be a personal conversation. "You said it was important," Eliza replied. He folded his hands on the polished surface. "The gala is next Saturday. 500 guests, including Governor Lamont and several key clients. It's important that we present a united family front, of course. Appearances above all." "I'll be there," she said. "I've already RSVP'd. "That's not what concerns me." He fixed her with the penetrating stare that had cowed subordinates for 4 decades. "I need assurance that there won't be any ... incidents." "Incidents," she repeated. Flatly, "You know what I mean, Eliza. No recordings, no public accusations, no scenes." She studied him, this man she'd spent her life trying to please, trying to understand. "I don't create scenes, Dad. I react to situations. Whatever you call it, I won't have my retirement tarnished by family drama." The old anger flared. "Funny how my legitimate feelings always become drama when they're inconvenient for you." Charles sighed heavily, pinching the bridge of his nose. "This is exactly what I mean. This ... sensitivity of yours, this need to interpret everything as an attack." "I don't interpret everything as an attack," Eliza said, working to keep her voice steady. "Just the actual attacks." For a moment, they stared at each other across the desk, the physical manifestation of the gulf between them. "Do you know why I built this company?" Charles asked suddenly. The question surprised her. "To make money, to create a legacy." "To protect my family," he corrected. "My father was a drunk who couldn't hold a job. My mother cleaned houses to keep food on the table. I started Bennett Financial so my children would never know that insecurity." This was new information. Charles rarely spoke of his childhood. "I didn't know that," Eliza said. "No, you wouldn't." A touch of bitterness colored his tone. "You've always seen me as the villain in your story. The cold father who didn't understand his sensitive daughter." "You never tried to understand me," she countered. "You just tried to change me." "I tried to prepare you," he said. "The world doesn't reward sensitivity, Eliza. It exploits it. I learned that lesson early. Something clicked into place." "Is that what happened to you? Someone exploited your sensitivity?" A muscle twitched in his jaw. "My father ridiculed any show of emotion as weakness. When I cried after my dog died, he made me sleep in the garage to toughen up. I was 8. His voice remained clinical, detached from the trauma he described. I learned to suppress that vulnerability. It served me well in business." Eliza absorbed this revelation, the cycle of emotional repression passing from father to child. "So, you did to me what he did to you?" she said quietly. "I protected you," he insisted. "I didn't want you crushed by a world that punishes people who feel too deeply." "By crushing me first?" She shook her head. "That's not protection, Dad. That's perpetuation." Charles stood abruptly, moving to the window. "You've never understood the sacrifices I've made. Everything I've done, the long hours, the difficult decisions, was to secure your future." "My financial future," Eliza clarified, "not my emotional well-being." "They're one and the same." "No, they're not. And that's the fundamental disconnect between us. You equate security with success, success with worth. I never needed Bennett Financial to feel worthy. I needed a father who saw me, really saw me, and valued me as I am." Charles turned, his expression unreadable. "And these recordings of yours, this case you're building, what do you hope to achieve with that?" The question echoed what Marcus and Dr. Shaw had asked. What was the end game? "At first, it was validation," she admitted. "Proof that I wasn't imagining the ways you and Mom and Diane dismiss and undermine me. But now, I think it's about breaking a pattern." "What pattern?" "The Bennett pattern of emotional suppression, of pathologizing sensitivity, of valuing appearances over authenticity." She met his gaze steadily. "I don't want Sophia growing up thinking her artistic side makes her defective. I don't want any sensitive child in this family feeling the way I did." For a moment, something flickered across Charles's face, recognition, perhaps even regret. But then the corporate mask slid back into place. "The gala," he said, returning to his original concern. I have your word there won't be any disruptions. Eliza considered her options. She could promise docility, play the dutiful daughter one last time. She could threaten exposure, leverage her recordings for a scene worthy of a boardroom coup, or she could try something new. I won't disrupt your retirement celebration, she said finally, but I won't pretend either. No more performance of the perfect Bennett family. Charles studied her for a long moment, and after the gala, what then? Then we decide what kind of relationship is possible, given who we actually are rather than who we've pretended to be. He nodded slowly, seeming suddenly older, wearier. You've changed. I've grown, she corrected. There's a difference. As she rose to leave, Charles said, Your foundation, the arts thing. Is that still happening? Yes, she said. I filed the paperwork. Using your trust fund? It's my money, Dad, to use as I see fit. He returned to his desk, pulled out a checkbook. I'd like to make a donation. Eliza stared at him, bewildered. Why? Charles wrote deliberately, tore out the check, and extended it toward her. Consider it an investment in a different kind of legacy. The amount made her breath catch 7 figures. Enough to fund the foundation for years. I don't understand, she said, not taking the check. Maybe I'm tired of the Bennett pattern too, he said, a rare vulnerability in his voice. Maybe I'd like one daughter who doesn't have to unlearn everything I taught her. Eliza accepted the check with trembling fingers. This doesn't fix everything. No. For once, he didn't argue or dismiss, but it's a start. As she drove home, Eliza turned the conversation over in her mind. Her father's revelation about his childhood cast their relationship in a new light, not excusing the harm, but contextualizing it. Charles had been trying, in his misguided way, to armor her against a world he perceived as hostile to sensitivity. Realization didn't heal the wounds of decades, but it offered something she hadn't expected, compassion for the frightened boy who'd grown into the formidable man behind the mahogany desk. The check sat beside her on the passenger seat, not a bribe or a manipulation, she believed, but a silent acknowledgement. Perhaps even an apology. Eliza wasn't sure if reconciliation was possible after so many years of emotional combat. But for the first time, she could envision a different kind of relationship with her father, one built on truth rather than performance, understanding rather than control. Whether that vision could survive the reality of the Bennett family dynamics remained to be seen. Margaret Bennett had always occupied an undefined space in Eliza's understanding of her family dynamics. Neither chief antagonist nor staunch defender, her mother floated somewhere in between, present but peripheral, observing but rarely intervening. So when Margaret called and asked Eliza to meet for lunch, just the two of them, Eliza was both. Surprised and wary, they met at Le Petit Café, an elegant French bistro where Margaret had been taking ladies' lunches for decades. Her mother was already seated when Eliza arrived, looking immaculate in a pale blue suit that highlighted her still striking blue eyes, the eyes Eliza had inherited. You look well, Margaret said as Eliza sat. The hair color suits you? Thank you, Eliza replied, uncertain. Genuine compliments from her mother were rare enough to be suspicious. They ordered salad nicoise for Margaret, French onion soup for Eliza, and engaged in the kind of superficial conversation that had defined their relationship for years. Local news, weather, benign gossip about family acquaintances. Finally, as their meals arrived, Margaret set down her fork and looked directly at Eliza. I spoke with your father about your meeting. Eliza tensed, and he said you were different, more assertive. Margaret tilted her head slightly. I notice it too. Therapy agrees with you. The observation, delivered without obvious judgment, caught Eliza off guard. It's helping me understand some things. About us, I imagine. Margaret sipped her water. About me. Eliza chose her words carefully. About family patterns. How certain dynamics get established and reinforced. Margaret nodded slowly, like my silence. The acknowledgement hung between them, unprecedented in its honesty. Yes, Eliza sighed, your silence. Her mother looked out the window, composing her thoughts. Did you know I wanted to be a pianist? Before I met your father? Eliza blinked. No, I was quite good. Juilliard good, my teacher said. A faint smile crossed Margaret's face. But my parents couldn't afford it, and then I met Charles at a country club fundraiser. He was so certain about everything. I found it comforting then. And later, Eliza prompted. Margaret's smile faded. Later, I realized certainty and control are different sides of the same coin. But by then, we had you girls, and the life we built double, she trailed off. One makes choices. Choices to enable Dad's behavior, to let him dismiss me. The questions emerged sharper than Eliza intended. I thought I was protecting you, Margaret said softly, teaching you to navigate Charles's expectations to avoid his disapproval, by teaching me to doubt myself, to apologize for my feelings. Margaret flinched. I never saw it that way. How did you see it? Her mother was quiet for a long moment, as compromise, as picking my battles, as survival. The raw honesty stunned Eliza. Mom, I have recordings too, Margaret interrupted. What? Margaret reached into her purse and withdrew a small digital recorder, nearly identical to Eliza's, not a family dinner's, of my own thoughts. I've been doing it for years, talking to myself when I'm alone, processing regrets. She placed the device on the table between them. I listened to some of them after Thanksgiving. After your revelation, I wanted to understand what you were doing, why you felt the need to document everything. Eliza stared at the recorder, and I heard myself say things I've never admitted aloud about how I failed you, how I recognized your sensitivity because I once had it too, before I learned to bury it. Margaret's perfectly manicured fingers trembled slightly. How I envy your courage to confront what I've spent a lifetime accommodating. The admission cracked. Something opened in Eliza's chest, a space where anger had lived, now flooded with a complex mix of empathy and sorrow. Why are you telling me this now? Because your father is retiring, because things are changing, because Margaret took a steadying breath. Because I don't want to be silent anymore. She pressed a button on the recorder. Her own voice emerged, quiet but clear. I was wrong to let Charles treat Eliza that way, wrong to reinforce his dismissal of her sensitivity. I see myself in her, the self I buried to become Mrs. Charles Bennett, and I hate that I've helped dim her light to make him comfortable. If I could do it all again. Margaret stopped the recording, her composure slipping. There's more, but that's the essence. Eliza sat frozen, processing this revelation. Her mother, her seemingly perfect, perpetually agreeable mother, had maintained her own secret record of truth. Does Dad know about these? She finally asked. No. One does, until now. Why show me? Margaret reached across the table, tentatively touching Eliza's hand. Because I want you to know you're not alone in questioning the Bennett narrative. And because, she hesitated, I'd like the chance to know my daughter. The real one, not the version I tried to shape to fit our family mold. Eliza didn't pull away from the touch. I'm not sure I know how to have that kind of relationship. With you, I'm not sure either, Margaret admitted. But perhaps we could try, after your father's gala. Perhaps we could start with coffee once a week, just talking, no performance. The offer was so simple, so human, and so unlike their decades of carefully choreographed interactions that Eliza felt tears threaten. I'd like that, she said as they finished their lunch. Eliza studied her mother with new eyes. The perfect coif, the designer outfit, the impeccable manners, all armor, she realized. All protection against a life that had slowly eroded the sensitive young pianist until only the polished shell of Margaret Bennett remained. I have a question, Eliza said as they prepared to leave. That night at Thanksgiving, when I revealed the recordings, you said I was highly strung, just like your sister before the breakdown. What did you mean? Margaret stilled. My sister Elena was like you, artistic, perceptive, feeling everything deeply. My parents treated her sensitivity the same way Charles treated yours. Margaret swallowed hard. She took her own life when she was 22. I was away at college. I didn't know how bad things had gotten. Oh, Mom. The pieces clicked into place, her mother's anxious hovering, her desperate attempts to mediate family conflicts. When you were born, and I saw that same sensitivity in you, Margaret's voice wavered. I thought I could protect you by teaching. You'd adapt. I realized now I should have protected your spirit instead. Outside the restaurant, Margaret embraced Eliza, not the usual air kiss, but a real hug, fierce and apologetic. I'm proud of you, she whispered, for fighting to be yourself, for being braver than I ever was. Driving home, Eliza felt lighter. Somehow, The case against her family had just grown more complicated, not dismissed, but nuanced by her mother's unexpected alliance. Her parallel journey of secret documentation. Perhaps the truth wasn't as simple as victims and villains. Perhaps it lived in the messy, painful space of human limitation, of patterns passed down through generations, until someone found the courage to break the chain. Eliza met Layla Park at a coffee shop 3 blocks from Bennett Financial's headquarters. As the company's marketing director for the past 5 years, Layla had been both colleague and cautious friend, one of the few people at the firm who seemed to value Eliza's creative input. "Thanks for meeting me," Eliza said, sliding into the booth opposite Layla. "I know it's awkward, given everything." Layla shrugged. "Your father's retiring, Diane's taking over, and office politics are at an all-time high. Awkward is the company motto these days. Is it that bad? Let's just say the succession announcement has revealed some interesting alliances." Layla sipped her Americano. "But you didn't ask me here to gossip about office dynamics?" "No," Eliza admitted. "I need information about my contributions to the company." Layla raised an eyebrow. "What kind of information?" Eliza hesitated, then decided on honesty. "Documentation of my work that was used without credit. Ideas that were implemented after being dismissed when I proposed them." "You're building a case," Layla said, not a question. In a manner of speaking, Layla studied her for a long moment. "This isn't about a lawsuit, is it? This is personal." Eliza nodded. "Family business is always personal, fair enough." Layla pulled out her tablet. "I've worked with you on at least a dozen projects over the years. I've seen how your ideas get stolen," Eliza corrected. "In corporate America, we call it leveraging existing resources," Layla said with a wry smile. "But yes, stolen." She opened a folder on her tablet and turned it toward Eliza. "The Chen's investment platform you proposed in 2021, rejected as too experimental. In the meeting where you presented it." Eliza remembered the dismissal clearly. Her father and sister exchanging glances, her mother's sympathetic but useless smile. 6 months later, Layla continued. "Diane presented essentially the same concept with a few superficial changes, and it was approved on the spot. It's now one of our most successful client acquisition tools." She swiped to another document. "The Community Foundation initiative you developed for high-net-worth clients, dismissed as too soft for a brand. Repackaged by the executive team as legacy planning for impact the following quarter." Document after document, proposal after proposal, a paper trail of Eliza's creativity, systematically appropriated without acknowledgement. "How did you collect all this?" Eliza asked, stunned by the thoroughness of the evidence. "I've been in corporate America for 15 years, Layla replied. "As a woman of color in finance, I learned early to document everything. It became habit." She paused. "Also, I believe in giving credit where it's due. What happened to you wasn't right." Eliza felt a rush of gratitude. "I didn't realize anyone noticed." "More people noticed than spoke up," Layla said, a hint of regret in her voice. "Myself included." "You're speaking up now," Eliza pointed out. "Better late than never, I suppose." Layla handed her a flash drive. "Everything's on here: original proposals, meeting minutes, implementation documents." "It's particularly striking when you see it all together." Eliza pocketed the drive. "Thank you. This means a lot. Can I ask what you plan to do with it?" "I'm not sure yet," Eliza admitted. "It's part of a larger reckoning." Layla nodded thoughtfully. "Whatever you decide, there's something else you should know." She lowered her voice. "The succession plan isn't as settled as it appears." "What do you mean?" "There's been pushback from the board about Diane taking full control. Several key members believe the transition is happening too quickly without proper vetting of alternatives." "What alternatives?" "Co-leadership has been discussed. Bringing in an outside CEO, and double quotes," Layla hesitated. "Your name has come up." Eliza nearly choked on her tea. "My name for CEO. For Chief Innovation Officer with a path to greater leadership. You have supporters, Eliza. People who recognize that sensitivity and perception are assets in today's business environment, not liabilities." The revelation left Eliza reeling. All these years believing she was dismissed by everyone at Bennett Financial, when in fact, a contingent had seen her value all along. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything now," Layla said. Just know that if you wanted a place at the table, a real one, not the token position your father's been offering, there would be institutional support. As they parted ways, Layla added one final piece of information. The board meets the morning after your father's gala. If you were planning any sort of ... statement, that might be strategic timing. Back in her apartment, Eliza connected the flash drive to her laptop. The evidence was damning, not just of individual instances of appropriation, but of a systematic pattern of dismissing her contributions only to implement them under someone else's name. She created a new folder in her case file, Corporate Evidence. As she organized the documents, a new perspective emerged. This wasn't just about family dynamics anymore. This was about gender bias, about the devaluation of emotional intelligence in business settings, about the ways institutions reinforced the very patterns her family had established. Her phone rang, Marcus calling. "I've been gathering corporate evidence," she said without preamble. "You wouldn't believe what I found." "Actually, I would," Marcus replied. "That's why I'm calling. I just got off the phone with my cousin who works at Hartford Business Journal. Apparently, there's buzz about your father's succession plan hitting some snags." "I just heard the same thing," Eliza said. "From a colleague at Bennett Financial." "The plot thickens," Marcus said. "So what's the plan? Are you going to make a play for leadership?" Eliza considered the question. A year ago, even 6 months ago, the idea would have seemed absurd. She'd accepted her role as the artistic Bennett, the outsider looking in. But now, with her growing self-awareness, with the validation from Dr. Shah and the evidence from Layla, she could see possibilities that had been invisible before. "I don't know," she said honestly. "I never wanted to run Bennett Financial, but I never wanted to be excluded from the family legacy either. What would a compromise look like?" Marcus asked if you could design your ideal role. The question crystallized something in Eliza's mind. "The foundation," she said. "Funded by Bennett Financial, but independent. Supporting artists and sensitive kids like Sophia, like I was." "Turning your pain into purpose," Marcus observed. "Very on brand for the new self-actualized Eliza," she laughed. "Is that who I am now?" "Getting there," he said. "One recorded family, dinner at a time." After they hung up, Eliza sat with the accumulated evidence, her recordings, her mother's surprising confessions, her father's complicated history. The corporate documents from Layla, the case she'd been building, had evolved from a simple indictment into something more nuanced, a multi-dimensional portrait of a family system, a business culture, a societal pattern of valuing certain traits, while pathologizing others. And somewhere in that complexity, Eliza began to see not just the path to vindication, but the possibility of transformation for herself, for her family, for the Bennett legacy. The gala was 3 days away. Whatever statement she planned to make needed to address all dimensions of the case, personal and professional, past and future. She opened a new document and began to type, "Statement of Purpose, the Bennett Arts Foundation." The night before her father's retirement gala, Eliza invited Marcus to her apartment to review her plans. She'd spent days crafting her approach, balancing accountability with opportunity, confrontation with connection. "I think I've finally figured out what I want from all this," she told him, spreading documents across her dining table. "Not just validation, but transformation. For the family, for the company, for myself." Marcus examined the foundation proposal she'd refined. "This is impressive, Liz. Professional, strategic, visionary. Light years beyond the rough concept you started with." "I've had good motivation," she said, sorting through her evidence files. "And excellent documentation." Marcus picked up a stack of recordings. "Have you listened to all of these again? Are you sure you want to use them?" "Just selected clips," she assured him. "The most undeniable instances of gaslighting and dismissal. Nothing that feels like a cheap shot." He nodded, but his expression remained troubled. "And you're planning to play these at the gala? In front of 500 people?" "Not during the event itself," Eliza clarified. "After my father's speech, I'll request a private moment with him, Mom, and Diane, present the evidence, the foundation, proposal, and my terms for moving forward." "What if they refuse the private meeting?" "Then I'll request time with the board the following morning, before their vote on the succession plan." Marcus sat back, studying her. "You've thought of everything?" "I've had months to prepare," she said. "Years, really." He was quiet for a moment, absently shuffling papers. "Can I ask you something?" Of course. When does it end? The question caught her off guard. What do you mean? This project. The documentation, the case building. At what point do you say enough and move on with your life? Eliza frowned. That's what I'm doing with the foundation proposal. Creating a path forward. Is it? Marcus leaned forward. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're still deep in the evidence gathering phase, still accumulating ammunition. That's not fair, she protested. I'm working toward resolution by planning confrontations, by leveraging recordings against your family. He gestured at the table. This doesn't look like moving on, Liz. It looks like obsession. The accusation stung. I thought you supported this project. I supported you documenting the gaslighting for your own validation, he said. I'm not sure I support using those recordings as weapons. They're not weapons, she insisted. They're evidence. Evidence for what? There's no trial here. No, jury. Except the one in your head. Eliza stood, pacing the small space. You don't understand. This isn't just about me feeling better. It's about changing a toxic system in my family and the company. And you think embarrassing them with secret recordings is going to change their hearts? Marcus asked gently. Make them suddenly value sensitivity. Appreciate the qualities they've dismissed your whole life? His questions pierced through her carefully constructed justifications. What would you have me do? Keep accepting their narrative? Keep pretending their behavior is okay? No, he said. But there's a difference between standing in your truth and trying to force others to acknowledge it. One is liberation. The other is just another form of seeking their validation. Eliza stared at him. Whose side are you on? Yours, he said without hesitation. Always yours. That's why I'm asking these questions. Because I'm worried you're setting yourself up for more hurt. By expecting my family to take responsibility for their actions. By expecting people to change in the exact way you want. On your timetable because you've presented irrefutable evidence. His voice softened. People don't work that way, Liz. Even when confronted with their worst behaviors, they often double down, get defensive. So I should just let it go? Pretend none of it happened? That's not what I'm saying. Marcus stood, joining her by the window. I think there is a middle path between confrontation and capitulation. Between demanding acknowledgement and abandoning your truth. Eliza wrapped her arms around herself. What does that look like? I don't know exactly, he admitted. But I think it starts with deciding what you truly need versus what you want them to give you. His words echoed Dr. Shaw's caution about expecting her family to provide the validation she sought. I need them to stop dismissing my sensitivity as a defect, she said after a moment. I need space in the family and the company for my way of seeing and experiencing the world. Those are legitimate needs, Marcus agreed. The question is whether exposing them with recordings is the most effective way to create that space. What's the alternative? More polite requests they can ignore? More therapy on my end while nothing changes on theirs? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. What about demonstrating the value of sensitivity rather than demanding they acknowledge? What if the foundation wasn't an ultimatum, but an invitation? An invitation to what? To see the world through your eyes. To experience the benefits of emotional intelligence and perceptiveness in action. The suggestion resonated with something Dr. Shaw had said about transforming pain into purpose. About sensitivity as a superpower rather than a weakness. You think I should soften my approach? Eliza said, not a question. I think you should consider whether your current approach serves your ultimate goal. Marcus gestured at the accumulated evidence. Does any of this help create the family and professional relationships you actually want? The question landed like a stone in still water, rippling through her carefully constructed plans. She'd been so focused on proving her case that she hadn't fully considered what would happen after the verdict. I don't know, she admitted. That's okay, Marcus said. Not knowing is part of growth too. Eliza sank onto the couch, suddenly exhausted. I've put so much into this, Marcus. Months of recordings, transcriptions, planning. If I don't use it ... then what? You've wasted your time? He sat beside her. The documentation has already served its purpose, Liz. It validated your reality. It helped you see clearly. It's not wasted effort. But without consequences, nothing changes. Maybe, he conceded. Or maybe change comes from unexpected directions. From compassion as much as confrontation. Eliza thought of her father's revelation about his childhood, her mother's secret recordings, the complex humanity beneath the Bennett facade. You think I should abandon the recordings altogether? I think you should ask yourself what kind of relationship you're trying to build and work backward from. There, Marcus squeezed her hand. The Eliza I know isn't vindictive. She's visionary. She sees possibilities others miss. The tension between them eased, but a new uncertainty took its place. Everything had seemed so clear when the goal was simply to prove her case. Now, with Marcus questioning her approach, the path forward blurred. I need to think, she said finally, reconsider my options. That's fair, Marcus stood. For what it's worth, I believe in you. However you decide to handle this, I know it will come from a place of integrity. After he left, Eliza stared at. The evidence spread across her table, months of meticulous documentation, years of accumulated hurt. The case against her family was solid, undeniable, but what would victory look like? And at what cost would it come? She picked up a recording from 3 months ago, particularly painful exchange with her father about her impractical career choices. Her finger hovered over the delete button, then moved away. Not yet. She wasn't ready to discard the evidence, but perhaps she needed to reconsider how or whether to use it. The gala was tomorrow. Whatever decision she made would shape not just the event, but the future of her relationship with her family. Eliza opened her laptop and began to revise her foundation proposal. Not as an ultimatum, but as an invitation. Not as a weapon, but as a bridge. The formal invitation to Charles Bennett's retirement gala had arrived 6 weeks ago, heavy cream cardstock with embossed gold lettering, as imposing as the man it celebrated. Eliza had set it on her mantel, a daily reminder of the approaching reckoning. Now, as she traced the elaborate script with her fingertip, a new detail caught her attention. At the bottom, in smaller font, remarks by Charles Bennett, Diane Bennett, and Eliza Bennett. Her name included as a speaker, without her knowledge or consent. Her phone rang, Diane calling. Did you get the updated program? Her sister asked without preamble. Just saw it, Eliza replied. Why am I listed as a speaker? Dad's idea. He wants both daughters to say a few words. Diane's tone was carefully neutral. I thought you'd be pleased to be informed at the last minute, to be expected to perform without preparation. It's hardly a performance, Eliza, just a brief tribute to Dad's career. I can send you what I'm planning to say if you need inspiration. The old pattern Diane setting the standard, Eliza expected to follow. But something had shifted in Eliza's perspective since her conversation with Marcus. The invitation to speak didn't feel like manipulation so much as opportunity. I'll handle it, she said. How long should I speak? 3 minutes max. The focus should be on Dad's business legacy, his vision for the company. Noted, Eliza said, already formulating a different approach. After they hung up, Eliza opened her laptop and began drafting remarks, not the dutiful daughter's tribute. Diane expected, but not the confrontational expose she'd been planning either. Something new, something bridge-building. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. Lunch tomorrow to discuss gala details? Just us. These past weeks, Margaret had been reaching out consistently, honoring her promise of regular connection. Their conversations remained somewhat awkward, decades of performance difficult to shed, but genuine moments broke through with increasing frequency. Eliza replied, Yes, noon at Westport Cafe. Margaret's response came quickly, Perfect. Looking forward to it. As Eliza returned to her draft, another text arrived, this one from Sophia. Aunt Eliza, can you help me with something? Don't tell Mom. Intrigued, Eliza called her niece. What's up, Soph? I want to give Grandpa a special retirement gift, Sophia explained, her voice hushed. A drawing I did of his office. But Mom says it's not appropriate, that I should give him a tie clip like Matthew is doing. Eliza felt a pang of recognition, the creative child seeking validation, the practical parent steering toward convention. What would you like me to do? Could you help me frame it properly? Make it look professional? Maybe then Mom will let me give it to him. Tell you what, Eliza said, I'll pick you up after school tomorrow. We'll get it framed, and if your mom still objects, you can give it to him from both of us. Really? The excitement in Sophia's voice was palpable. Really, art deserves to be seen, Soph, especially when it comes from the heart. The following afternoon, Eliza waited outside Greenwich Academy as students streamed out. Sophia spotted her and raced over, backpack bouncing, a large portfolio clutched to her chest. "I brought it," she announced, sliding into the passenger seat. "Do you think Grandpa will like it?" "Let's see," Eliza said. Sophia carefully extracted a large sketch from her portfolio. Rendered in charcoal and colored pencil, it depicted Charles Bennett's office with remarkable precision, the heavy desk, the wall of awards, the view of the harbor through tall windows. But what struck Eliza was the quality of light in the drawing, the way Sophia had captured both the space's imposing formality and its underlying warmth. "Sophia, this is extraordinary," Eliza said, genuinely impressed. "You've really captured something essential about that room." The girl beamed. "I've been working on it for weeks. Mom doesn't think Grandpa will appreciate it, but you see things others miss," Eliza finished. "That's a gift, Sophia, one I recognize." At the frame shop, they selected a simple but elegant black frame that complemented without competing with the artwork. As the framer measured the drawing, Sophia turned to Eliza. "Mom says I'm too sensitive about things, that I need to toughen up." The echo of Eliza's own childhood sent a chill through her. "What do you think about that?" Sophia considered the question with surprising thoughtfulness for a 10-year-old. "I think I notice things other people don't, like how Grandpa's office feels both scary and safe at the same time." "Is that being sensitive?" "That's being perceptive," Eliza said. "And perceptiveness is a strength, not a weakness." "That's not what Mom says." "Your mom was raised to value certain qualities over others. We all were. But that doesn't mean she's right." Sophia nodded, absorbing this. "Are you sensitive too, Aunt Eliza?" "Very," Eliza admitted. "And it took me a long time to see that as a strength. To stop apologizing for how I experience the world." "I don't want to wait that long," Sophia said with surprising determination, looking at her niece, this perceptive, artistic child standing. At the same crossroads she had faced decades ago, Eliza felt a renewed sense of purpose. The foundation wasn't just about healing her own wounds. It was about preventing the same patterns from scarring the next generation. "You won't have to," she promised, that evening after dropping Sophia at home, the framed drawing safely hidden. In Eliza's trunk until the gala, Eliza revised her speech draft once more. The words flowed differently now, shaped by her conversations with Sophia, with Marcus, with her mother. No longer a case for the prosecution, but a vision for the future. Not an indictment, but an invitation. Her phone buzzed with a text from her father. "Diane tells me you're prepared to speak tomorrow. Keep it brief and appropriate." The old Eliza would have bristled at the directive, the implicit lack of trust. The new Eliza saw it as confirmation that her path forward was the right one. She texted back simply, "I'll speak from the heart." His response came after a long pause. "Just remember, it's my retirement, not your therapy session." Eliza set the phone aside without replying. Tomorrow would speak for itself. She opened her evidence files one last time, reviewing the recordings, the emails, the corporate documents. The case against the Bennetts remained compelling, irrefutable, but perhaps, she thought, closing the files, the strongest case wasn't against her family, but for a new way forward, one that honored sensitivity as strength, perception as power, emotional intelligence as essential. The gala invitation sat on her mantle, no longer a summons to battle, but a genuine opportunity, not to settle scores, but to bridge divides. Not to prove she was right, but to demonstrate a different way of being right. Eliza Bennett, the sensitive daughter, was ready to speak her truth, not in anger, but an invitation. The day before her father's retirement gala dawned bright and clear, a perfect New England autumn morning that belied Eliza's inner turbulence. She'd barely slept, her mind cycling through various scenarios for the following evening, reactions to her speech. Potential fallout, bridges built or permanently burned. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. Dr. Shaw had made room for an emergency session at 10 a.m. Eliza had called late last night, recognizing she needed grounding before the event that might reshape her family's future. In the therapist's familiar office, Eliza described her evolving approach. "I'm not planning to play the recordings anymore," she explained, "but I'm still going to speak my truth about sensitivity, about how it's been pathologized in our family." Dr. Shaw nodded. "What changed your perspective?" "A conversation with Marcus, with my niece, even with my mother, in a way." Eliza paused, considering. I realized I was still seeking their validation through confrontation, still making my healing dependent on their response. That's a profound insight, Dr. Shah observed. How does this new approach feel? Scary, Eliza admitted. Playing the recordings felt powerful, like holding irrefutable evidence. Speaking from the heart without that backup feels vulnerable. Vulnerability requires greater courage than confrontation, Dr. Shah said. It opens possibilities that accusation forecloses. But what if nothing changes? What if they continue dismissing my sensitivity, my perceptions? Then you'll have demonstrated integrity regardless of their response. Your healing isn't contingent on their acknowledgement, Eliza. It's grounded in your own self-acceptance. Eliza absorbed this. The foundation proposal is still part of my plan. Creating space for sensitive children like Sophia, like I was, that feels non-negotiable. A positive vision rather than a reaction, Dr. Shah noted. That's growth. As the session ended, Dr. Shah offered a final thought. Remember that your family may surprise you. People are complex, capable of both profound rigidity and unexpected evolution. I'm trying to be open to that possibility, Eliza said. It's easier with Mom, even with Dad in some ways. Diane is harder. Siblings often have the most entrenched patterns, Dr. Shah acknowledged. But sometimes the strongest conflicts exist, where the deepest connections are possible. The words stayed with Eliza as she left the office, a counterbalance to her lingering resentment toward her sister. Her next stop was the framers to pick up Sophia's artwork. The finished piece looked even more impressive, professionally mounted, the skill evident, the perception undeniable. It would be impossible for anyone, even Charles Bennett, to dismiss it as merely a child's drawing. As she carefully placed it in her trunk, her phone rang. Diane, we need to coordinate outfits for tomorrow, her sister said without greeting. Mom doesn't want us clashing in the family photos. The old pattern, Diane managing, directing, controlling. But now Eliza heard something else beneath the brisk. Efficiency, anxiety, perhaps even insecurity. I'm wearing the midnight blue dress from Neiman's, Eliza said. The one with the asymmetrical neckline. That single quote's actually perfect, Diane said, sounding surprised. It complements my burgundy gown without matching too closely. I do have some sense of aesthetics, Eliza said, the response more automatic than intentional. A beat of silence. I never said you didn't. You never had to. It was implied in every comparison, every correction. Another silence, longer this time. Then, unexpectedly, is that how I've made you feel? The question caught Eliza off guard, vulnerable, genuine, unlike her sister's usual defensive posture. Yes, she said simply. For as long as I can remember, that wasn't my intention. Diane's voice was quiet, thoughtful. I always thought I was helping you navigate Dad's expectations, making things easier. The parallel to their mother's explanation was striking. By molding me into someone more acceptable to him, more like you. By helping you avoid his disappointment, Diane corrected. I saw how it hurt you, in ways it never seemed to hurt me. I thought I was being protective. Eliza pulled over, needing to focus on this unexpected conversation. You never said that. We don't say a lot of things in this family, Diane observed. We just perform our roles. The insight, so aligned with Eliza's own journey, was the last thing she'd expected from her seemingly perfect, apparently oblivious sister. Diane, do you ever wish things were different between us? A soft exhale on the other end of the line. Sometimes I wonder what we'd be like if we weren't always positioned as rivals. If we'd been allowed to just be sisters. The vulnerability. And her voice cracked something open in Eliza's chest. Me too. I know about the recordings, Diane said after a moment. Dad told me. Eliza tensed. And I understand why you felt you needed them. Another pause. I've been thinking about Sophia lately. About how she reminds me of you at that age. Sensitive. Perceptive. She's extraordinarily talented, Eliza said. Her art shows remarkable depth of perception. I know, Diane admitted. It scares me sometimes. How much she feels, how deeply she sees. I worry the world will hurt her for it. Just as our parents worried about me, Eliza thought. The pattern repeating generation to generation. There are other ways to protect her than teaching her to doubt herself, Eliza said gently. Ways that honor her gifts rather than pathologizing them, like your foundation idea. Diane asked. Mom mentioned it. Yes, creating space for sensitive children to develop their perceptiveness as a strength, not a weakness to overcome. Diane was quiet for a long moment. I'd like to hear more about that. After tomorrow's event, maybe? The olive branch extended. Tentatively but genuinely, brought unexpected tears to Eliza's eyes. I'd like that, she said. After they hung up, Eliza sat in her parked car, processing the conversation. Her sister, competitive, controlling Diane, had revealed depths Eliza hadn't allowed herself to see. The possibility of connection where she'd assumed only conflict existed. Her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Ready for tomorrow? She replied, getting there. Had a surprisingly real conversation with Diane just now. His response came quickly. See? People can surprise you. Call if you need backup tonight. Eliza drove home in a state of cautious hope. The speech she'd drafted felt even more right now, not an accusation, but an invitation to a new way of relating, to a future where sensitivity was valued rather than dismissed. That evening, she reviewed her notes one last time, then set them aside. Tomorrow would unfold as it would, beyond her complete control. All she could do was speak her truth and remain open to whatever emerged. Before bed, she opened the case file on her computer, months of meticulously documented evidence. Carefully categorized and annotated. She didn't delete it, that felt premature. But she created a new folder labeled Legacy and moved all the files there. No longer ammunition for battle, but artifacts of a journey. Not evidence against her family, but testament to her own growth. Whatever happened at tomorrow's gala, Eliza Bennett was no longer the plaintiff in the case. She was the author of her own story, sensitive and strong, perceiving deeply and standing firmly in that perception. The Bennett case remained open, but its purpose had transformed from prosecution to possibility, from grievance to growth. Grand ballroom of the Greenwich Country Club glowed with subdued elegance, crystal chandeliers dimmed to a flattering warmth. Tables adorned with arrangements of autumn blooms, a string quartet playing quietly in the corner. 500 of Connecticut's financial and social elite mingled, celebrating Charles Bennett's 4 decades of industry leadership. Eliza arrived alone, Sophia's framed drawing carefully wrapped and tucked under her arm. She'd chosen to forego the family entrance, needing these moments of solitude to center herself before the evening's performance began. Eliza Bennett, a voice called as she handed her wrap to the coat check, the artistic daughter in the flesh. She turned to find Jonathan Winters, her father's longtime attorney, martini in hand. Good evening, Jonathan. Quite the affair your father's put together, he observed, gesturing expansively. The end of an era, and the beginning of another, she replied. Indeed. His eyes narrowed slightly. I understand you'll be speaking tonight. That's ... unexpected. The subtle implication that she didn't belong at the podium might once have triggered defensiveness. Now Eliza simply smiled. Full of surprises, aren't I? She excused herself and moved through the crowd, accepting congratulations meant for her father, deflecting questions about the succession plan, observing the subtle hierarchies reflected in seating arrangements and conversation groupings. Her mother intercepted her near the main entrance. Darling, you look stunning. Margaret's compliment seemed genuine, her eyes warm as she took in Eliza's midnight blue gown. But why didn't you arrive with us? Your father was asking. I needed a moment to myself, Eliza said honestly. It's a big night. Yes, Margaret squeezed her hand. Are you ... prepared for your speech? As much as I can be. Her mother nodded, understanding the subtext. I'll be right there in the front, supporting you. The words so simple, so previously rare, wrapped around Eliza like a protective embrace. Diane approached, resplendent in burgundy silk. There you are. Dad's about to begin the receiving line. We're expected to join him. The sisters stood side by side as Charles Bennett greeted his guests, the perfect family tableau, practiced over decades of public appearances. But beneath the performance, Eliza sensed new currents, her mother's hand occasionally touching her back in silent support. Diane's surprising deference when introducing her to board members. Her father's glances that held something almost like curiosity. Eliza, Charles said during a brief lull. What's that package you're carrying? A special gift, she replied. From Sophia, I helped her prepare it. Something flickered across his face, surprise, perhaps skepticism. I see. Well, there's a table for presents by the entrance. "This one's for the private family gathering after," Eliza said. "It's personal." Before he could respond, the event coordinator signaled that dinner was about to be served. The Bennetts took their places at the head table, positioned on a slight dais overlooking the room. Eliza found herself seated between her mother and Ted, Diane's husband, with her father and sister directly across from her. The meal progressed with choreographed precision 5 elegant courses, interspersed with brief toasts from industry colleagues and family friends. Eliza observed it all with the heightened awareness that had been both her burden and gift since childhood, noticing the subtle dynamics others missed, board members watching her father with calculating eyes, her mother's perfectly maintained smile that softened only when looking at her daughters. Diane's nervousness masked as efficiency, visible in the way she repositioned her silverware between courses. After dessert, the formal program began. CEO of a competing firm offered a roast disguised as tribute. The governor sent video remarks praising Charles's contributions to Connecticut's economy. The board chairman presented an engraved crystal obelisk commemorating 40 years of leadership. Finally, Charles Bennett rose to speak. His address hit the expected notes: gratitude to colleagues, pride in the company's growth, confidence in its future under new leadership. But then he departed from his usual script. "I've spent 4 decades focused on building financial security," he said, his voice softening slightly, "on creating certainty in an uncertain world. It seemed the most important gift I could give my family, my clients, my community." He paused, looking directly at Eliza for the first time that evening. "I'm beginning to understand there are other forms of wealth, other kinds of security. My daughter Eliza has been trying to teach me this, in her way, for many years." A murmur rippled through the crowd. This uncharacteristic acknowledgement from Charles Bennett, known for his unsentimental focus on bottom lines, caught everyone, especially Eliza, off guard. "I haven't always been the best student," he continued with the hint of a self-deprecating smile. "But as I step into this new chapter, I find myself more open to different perspectives, different measures of success." He raised his glass. "To legacy in all its forms, financial, yes, but also creative, emotional, spiritual. To the Bennett future, which I trust will be richer and more diverse than even I could have planned." The toast complete, he gestured toward Diane. "And now my daughter and successor, Diane Bennett Reynolds, will say a few words." Diane's speech was polished, professional, focused on the company's future while honoring its past. But Eliza noticed something new in her sister's delivery: brief moments of genuine emotion breaking through the practice facade, especially when acknowledging their father's mentorship. "And now," Diane concluded, "my sister Eliza will share some thoughts." The moment had arrived. Eliza rose and approached the podium, aware of 500 pairs of eyes tracking her movement, of her father's watchful gaze, her mother's encouraging nod, her sister's surprisingly open expression. She placed her notes on the lectern but didn't immediately look at them. Instead, she surveyed the room, the power brokers and wealth managers, the family friends and business associates who had witnessed the Bennett narrative unfold over decades. "For those who don't know me," she began, "I'm the artistic Bennett, the sensitive one, the one who processes the world through perception rather than calculation." A soft chuckle rippled through the audience, acknowledgement of the family dynamic everyone recognized. "For much of my life, I saw this sensitivity as a liability, a quality to be overcome rather than embraced. Something that made me less than, rather than different from, the Bennett ideal." She glanced at her father, who was watching her with uncharacteristic attentiveness. "I've recently come to understand that sensitivity, the ability to perceive deeply, to notice what others miss. To feel the currents that run beneath surfaces isn't a weakness to transcend, but a strength to cultivate." Eliza touched the notes before her, but continued speaking from the heart. "My father built Bennett Financial on principles of security, stability, growth, qualities our family has valued for generations. Important qualities that have created prosperity and opportunity." She paused, feeling the weight of what came next. "What I've learned, what I'm still learning, is that there's room for other qualities too. For perception alongside projection, for emotional intelligence alongside analytical acumen, for art alongside finance." Her gaze found Sophia in the audience, watching with rapt attention. "The true Bennett legacy isn't just the company my father built, impressive though it is. It's the possibility of integration, of honoring diverse gifts within a family, a company, a community, of recognizing that sensitivity and strength aren't opposites, but companions. Eliza looked directly at her father now. Dad, you taught me the value of persistence, of excellence, of vision. I hope that I, in my way, have shown you the value of perception, of emotional depth, of seeing what lies beneath the surface. She smiled, genuine and open. As you enter this new chapter, I hope you'll continue exploring those depths. They're as rewarding in their way as the heights you've reached in business. Eliza turned slightly, addressing her sister. Diane, as you lead Bennett Financial forward, I hope you'll find ways to integrate both our strengths, your remarkable focus and my perceptive vision. Together, they make something more powerful than either alone. Finally, she addressed the wider audience. Tonight, I'm announcing the formation of the Bennett Arts Foundation, which will nurture perceptive, sensitive children, like I once was, helping them develop their unique gifts as strengths rather than liabilities. My father has already become our founding donor, demonstrating that even the most established narratives can evolve in beautiful, unexpected ways. A murmur of surprise and approval moved through the crowd. Charles Bennett's expression remained composed, but something in his eyes proud acknowledgement gave Eliza the courage to complete her speech. To sensitivity as strength, she concluded, raising her glass. To perception as power. To the full spectrum of the Bennett legacy. The applause that followed felt genuine, appreciative. As Eliza returned to her seat, her mother squeezed her hand, tears glistening in eyes so like her own. Diane nodded, a gesture of respect if not yet full understanding. And her father complex, difficult Charles Bennett held her gaze for a long moment before inclining his head slightly, the closest he'd ever come to a public acknowledgement of her worth. It wasn't perfect resolution. It wasn't complete validation. But it was, Eliza realized, a beginning and opening where, for so long, there had been only walls. The case remained open, but its nature had fundamentally changed. No longer a prosecution seeking judgment, but an invitation offering possibility. As the formal program concluded and guests began to mingle once more, Eliza felt a lightness she hadn't expected, not the triumphant vindication she'd once imagined, but something quieter and ultimately more powerful. She had spoken her truth without accusation, offered vision without demand, extended invitation without ultimatum. And in doing so, she had finally stepped fully into her most authentic self, sensitive and strong, perceptive and powerful, no longer seeking external validation for qualities that were and had always been her greatest gifts. After the formal program concluded, guests circulated through the ballroom, congratulating Charles and discussing the evening's unexpected turns. Many approached Eliza, expressing interest in her foundation or commenting on her moving speech. Quite a different perspective on the Bennett legacy, Jonathan Winters observed, appearing at her elbow. I must say, I didn't expect Charles to acknowledge your alternative vision so publicly. Neither did I, Eliza admitted. The foundation is an interesting concept, he continued. If you need legal assistance setting it up properly, my firm would be happy to help. Thank you, but I've already engaged counsel, she smiled politely. Hannah Whitmore's firm specializes in nonprofit law. Your cousin? Jonathan raised an eyebrow. Well, keeping it in the family, I suppose. As he moved away, Eliza felt a hand on her arm. Her father stood aside. His expression unreadable. The family is gathering in the library for a private moment, he said. Your mother's request. The Bennett family tradition, a quiet interlude amid public celebrations, usually to exchange meaningful gifts or share news too personal for the wider audience. Eliza nodded. I'll be right there. I need to get Sophia's gift from the coat check. Minutes later, she entered the club's wood-paneled library where her parents, Diane, Ted, and the twins waited. Matthew clutched a small box, the tie clip he'd selected for her. His grandfather. Sophia stood slightly apart, watching Eliza anxiously as she entered with a wrapped frame. Before we begin, Margaret said, taking charge with unusual assertiveness, I want to thank you all for making this evening special. Particularly you, Eliza. Your speech was ... She paused, searching for the right word, honest. And healing. I think. Charles cleared his throat. Yes, well said. He turned to his grandchildren. I understand you have something for me. Matthew stepped forward first, presenting his gift with polished confidence. Charles made appropriate noises of appreciation over the monogrammed silver tie clip, complimenting the boy's practical taste. Then all eyes turned to Sophia, who hesitated until Eliza gave her an encouraging nod. "I made something for you, Grandpa," she said softly, stepping forward as Eliza handed her the wrapped frame. "Aunt." Eliza helped me get it ready. Charles accepted the package, carefully removing the wrapping paper. As the drawing was revealed, his expression shifted from polite interest to genuine surprise. "You drew this?" he asked, studying the detailed rendering of his office. Sophia nodded, uncertain. "I wanted to capture how it feels to be in your special place. The important feeling, but also the quiet corner by the window where you keep Grandma's picture." Charles stared at the drawing, then at his granddaughter. "You notice that?" "Sophia notices everything," Eliza said quietly. "She sees beneath surfaces, perceives what others miss. Like someone else I know." Charles looked up sharply, meeting Eliza's gaze. A moment of understanding passed between them, recognition of the pattern repeating, the sensitivity reappearing in a new generation. "That's extraordinary," he said finally, addressing Sophia. "Not just technically accomplished, but perceptive. You've captured something essential about that space. Something I've never been able to articulate." Sophia beamed. "Really? Mom thought you might prefer something more practical." "Practical gifts are common," Charles said, glancing briefly at Diane. "This is singular. Thank you, Sophia. I'll hang it in my home office where I can see it every day." The genuine appreciation in his voice brought tears to Sophia's eyes. Eliza felt her own throat tighten, this moment of validation for her niece, representing something she'd sought her entire life. "I have one more announcement," Charles said, setting the drawing carefully aside. "Regarding the company succession." The room tensed. Diane straightened almost imperceptibly. "The board and I have been discussing the future leadership structure," he continued. "After considerable deliberation, we've decided on a co-leadership model." A beat of silence. Diane's face registered shock, then calculation. "Diane will assume the role of CEO as planned," Charles said. "And Eliza, if she's willing, will take on a newly created position as Chief Creative Officer, overseeing the foundation and developing innovative approaches to client engagement." Now it was Eliza's turn to be stunned. It was Diane's suggestion, actually," he added, surprising everyone in the room. All eyes turned to Diane, who flushed slightly. "The board was concerned about maintaining creative vision alongside financial stability," she explained. "I simply pointed out that we already had the perfect creative visionary in the family." "When did you decide this?" Eliza asked, struggling to process the revelation. "After our conversation yesterday," Diane said. "I spoke with Dad last night." Charles nodded. "It makes strategic sense. Bennett Financial needs both kinds of leadership, analytical and perceptive. I should have recognized that sooner." The acknowledgement so long sought, so casually delivered, left Eliza momentarily speechless. Her mother stepped into the silence. "What Charles is trying to say," Margaret interpreted, "is that he's proud of both his daughters and wants to create space for both your gifts and the family legacy." Charles didn't contradict her. Instead, he looked directly at Eliza. "The position is yours if you want it. No pressure, no expectations, a genuine offer." Eliza felt the weight of the moment, this unexpected opportunity to integrate her perceptive gifts into the family business, to transform Bennett Financial from within rather than from the margins. "I'll need time to consider it," she said finally. "This isn't what I expected." "Take all the time you need," Charles replied. "The offer stands regardless of your decision about the recordings." Eliza stared at him. "What?" "The recordings you've been collecting," he clarified. "Your case against us." "I'm not ignorant, Eliza. I recognize documentation when I see it." The room went very still. Margaret looked at her hands. Diane's expression remained carefully neutral. "I wasn't planning to use them," Eliza said quietly. "Not anymore, I know." A hint of something like respect flickered in Charles's eyes. "Your speech made that clear. But for what it's worth, I've been doing some recording of my own." He reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew a small device similar to Eliza's own. "Recorder, reflections," he explained. "All mistakes made. Patterns recognized too late. Things I wish I'd done differently." Margaret's sharp intake of breath suggested this was news to her as well. Your mother isn't the only one capable of self-examination, Charles said, a rare vulnerability in his voice. Just the one brave enough to share it with you. He placed the recorder on the table between them, not playing it, simply acknowledging its existence. A parallel journey undertaken in private. I'd like you to listen to it someday, he said, when you're ready. When we're both ready. The revelation stunned Eliza, this evidence that her father, like her mother, had been conducting his own internal case review, his own examination of family patterns and personal responsibility. The Bennett case was transforming before her eyes, from prosecution to collective reckoning, from judgment to mutual recognition. I'd like that, she said simply, as the family moment concluded and they prepared to rejoin the gala. Sophia slipped her hand into Eliza's. Does this mean you and Mom will work together? She asked, like a team. Eliza glanced at Diane, who was watching them with an uncharacteristically open expression. We're figuring that out, Eliza told her niece. But I think we might be better together than we ever were apart. The week following Charles Bennett's retirement gala unfolded in ways Eliza could never have predicted. News of the co-leadership structure at Bennett Financial made waves through Connecticut's business community, with the financial press alternately praising the innovative approach or questioning the wisdom of elevating the artistic daughter to executive leadership. Eliza had requested a week to consider the offer, using the time to consult with Marcus, Dr. Shaw, and, most surprisingly, Hannah, whose legal expertise proved invaluable in negotiating terms that would preserve both her authority and her independence. On Tuesday morning, she met Diane for coffee there. First one-on-one conversation since the gala's revelations. Why did you suggest me for the CCO position? Eliza asked directly once they were seated in a quiet corner of the CAF. Acute. Diane considered the question, taking an uncharacteristic moment to gather her thoughts. Initially, it was strategic, she admitted. The board was hesitant about a single leader. Model, concerned about losing Dad's creative vision for client relationships. And suggesting your sensitive, artistic sister solve that problem, Eliza observed, no accusation in her tone. Yes, Diane acknowledged. But then I started really thinking about it, about how your perspective has always been different from mine, from Dad's. How you see things we miss. She stirred her coffee absently. Remember that Morgan acquisition in 2018? You said it felt wrong, that something about their corporate culture seemed off. Dad and I dismissed your concerns as intuitive rather than data-driven. I remember, Eliza said. The familiar pattern of dismissal. You were right, Diane said simply. 6 months after we acquired them, we discovered systemic compliance issues that cost us millions to rectify. Your feeling picked up what our due diligence missed. The acknowledgement, so straightforward, so long in coming, left Eliza momentarily speechless. That's happened more than once, Diane continued. Your design instincts for our marketing materials, your sense about certain clients, you perceive things differently. And that perception has value, real, measurable business value. I'm surprised to hear you say that. I'm surprised to be saying it, Diane admitted with a small smile. But watching Sophia these past few years, seeing her sensitivity, her perception, her artistic talent developing, it's made me reconsider some things, including how we've treated your gifts. She met Eliza's gaze directly. I don't want her growing up thinking she has to choose between being perceptive and being taken seriously. I don't want her hiding her drawings the way you used to hide yours. The reference to their shared childhood, a rare acknowledgement of their parallel journeys, cracked something open between them. So this offer is legitimate? Eliza asked. Not just a gesture to smooth over family tension. It's legitimate, Diane confirmed. The position comes with real authority, equal compensation to mine, and board representation. You'd oversee the foundation and lead a new division focused on innovative client engagement strategies. She leaned forward slightly. But more than that, I'm hoping it might be a chance to rewrite our story. To be partners instead of rivals. To see what the Bennett sisters might accomplish together instead of in opposition. The sincerity in her voice was unmistakable. Eliza felt years of accumulated resentment begin to shift, making space for a cautious hope. It won't be easy, she warned. We have decades of patterns to overcome. I know, Diane acknowledged. But maybe that's part of the legacy we create, showing how different perspectives can strengthen rather than divide. Later that day, Eliza visited her parents' home to meet with her father. Charles had moved his office from the company headquarters to a newly renovated space in their home, where Sophia's drawing already hung prominently on the wall. "You've considered the offer?" he asked as she settled into the chair across from his desk. "I have," Eliza replied. "I'm still processing everything that happened at the gala. Your announcement, your recorder." Charles nodded, his expression more open than she could ever remember seeing it. "I owe you an explanation about that." "You don't owe me anything, Dad, but I'd like to understand." He was quiet for a moment, organizing his thoughts in that methodical way she'd observed her entire life. "After your Thanksgiving revelation about recording family interactions, I was angry," he began. "Felt it was a violation of trust and ambush. But then I started thinking about why you might have felt the need to document everything." He leaned back in his chair. "I began recording my own reflections as a way to fact-check my memories against yours, to see if I could understand your perspective." "And did you?" Eliza asked softly. "More than I expected to," he admitted. "I realized patterns I'd never acknowledged, ways I dismissed your sensitivity that echoed how my father treated mine. A cycle I promised myself I wouldn't repeat, yet somehow did anyway." The vulnerability in his voice, this Titan finance acknowledging his own blind spots, moved Eliza deeply. "I'm not asking you to forgive everything," Charles continued. "Some wounds take time to heal. But I am asking you to consider the CCO position as a genuine opportunity to integrate your gifts into the Bennett legacy." "I've decided to accept," Eliza said, "with certain conditions about the Foundation's independence and my authority in creative decisions." Relief and something like pride crossed her father's face. "I wouldn't expect anything less." "Hannah helped you draft those conditions, I imagine?" "She did," Eliza confirmed, surprised by his perception. "Smart choice. She's an excellent attorney." Charles smiled slightly. "Always did remind me of you. Same perceptiveness, same determination." The comparison cousin Hannah who'd forged her own path despite family pressure felt like the highest compliment he could offer Dot as their meeting concluded. Charles said, "There's one more thing. About the recordings, yours and mine. I've been thinking about what to do with them." "What do you mean?" "They represent different perspectives on the same events, the same family dynamics. Different truths, equally valid." He hesitated. "Perhaps they belong together. A complete record, not for recrimination, but for understanding." The suggestion surprised her. "You want to combine our recordings? Only if you're willing, as a kind of family archive? For healing, not accusation, for Sophia and Matthew someday, perhaps? So they understand the patterns we're trying not to repeat." The proposal, this merging of separate testimonies into a shared narrative, seemed to embody the transformation their family was tentatively beginning. Not erasing the difficult past, but integrating it into a more complete understanding. "I'll think about it," Eliza said. That evening, she called Marcus to share the developments. "Chief Creative Officer of Bennett Financial," he marveled. "That's quite a plot twist." "I know," Eliza agreed. "A week ago, I was planning to confront them with recordings, and now I'm joining the executive team." "Are you happy with the decision?" She considered the question carefully. "I think I am. Not because it validates me in the way I once thought I needed, but because it creates space for genuine change in the company and my family and myself. And the recordings. Your case file. Dad suggested combining our recordings as a family archive, a shared record of different perspectives." "That's surprisingly enlightened of him," Marcus observed. "People can surprise you," Eliza said, echoing his words from days earlier. "Even Charles Bennett." As she prepared for bed that night, Eliza realized the heaviness she'd carried for months, years, really had begun to lift, not because her family had suddenly transformed or because all wounds were healed, but because she no longer needed their validation to trust her own perceptions. The case remained open, but its purpose had evolved. No longer a prosecution seeking judgment, but a documentation of growth, painful, imperfect, ongoing. Tomorrow, she would begin drafting a press release announcing the Bennett Arts Foundation's formation. Next week, she would meet with the Bennett Financial Board to formalize her new position. The future remained unwritten, the family dynamics still evolving. But for the first time in her life, Eliza Bennett faced that uncertainty without doubting her most essential self-sensitive and perceptive, emotionally intelligent and creatively powerful, not despite her family, but increasingly alongside them. 6 months after Charles Bennett's retirement gala, the atrium of the newly renovated Bennett Arts Foundation headquarters buzzed with activity. Children's artwork lined the walls. A string quartet of young musicians played in the corner, and caterers circulated with hors d'oeuvres among Connecticut's business elite and art community leaders. Eliza stood near the center of the room, engaged in animated conversation with a potential donor. Her role as chief creative officer of Bennett Financial had evolved alongside her leadership of the foundation, creating unexpected synergies between the financial world and the arts community she'd always inhabited. Aunt Eliza, Sophia's voice cut through the crowd as she bounded over, portfolio clutched to her chest. Ms. Rivera says my series got accepted for the youth exhibition. That's wonderful. Eliza embraced her niece, genuine pride warming her voice. The light studies you've been working on? Yes, she said my use of shadow and reflection shows remarkable emotional intelligence. Sophia's expression joy, unfiltered by self-consciousness, reflected the freedom she'd found in the foundation's programs. Diane approached, elegant in a tailored suit, her smile holding none of the strained quality Eliza remembered from childhood gatherings. Congratulations, honey, she told Sophia. Dad and I will be at the opening night. The casual support, so different from the qualified praise of their own childhood, made Eliza's heart swell. The patterns were shifting, not perfectly, not completely, but meaningfully. The board members are impressed, Diane told Eliza, gesturing toward a cluster of Bennett financial executives touring the facility, especially Morrison. He mentioned the foundation's community engagement is opening doors to new client demographics we've struggled to reach. Sensitivity as business strategy, Eliza observed with a small smile. Who would have thought? You did, Diane acknowledged. That's why this works. Their professional relationship had developed a rhythm over the past months, Diane's analytical strengths complementing Eliza's perceptive vision, creating a leadership dynamic that industry publications had begun referencing as a model for family businesses. Their personal relationship remained more complex, decades of patterns not easily undone. But weekly lunches had become a tradition, creating space for conversations that moved gradually from professional coordination to more vulnerable terrain, shared childhood memories, divergent perceptions, tentative visions for a different kind of sisterhood. Mom and Dad just arrived, Diane noted, nodding toward the entrance where Charles and Margaret Bennett were greeting the foundation's art director. Eliza watched her parents with the perceptiveness that had once been dismissed as hypersensitivity. They moved differently now, Margaret more assertive, Charles more receptive, their dynamic shifting in subtle but significant ways. I should go welcome them, Eliza said. The donor list is on my desk if you want to review it before your remarks. As she crossed the room, Eliza caught sight of Marcus chatting with Hannah near the exhibition of children's artwork. He'd been instrumental in developing the foundation's mentorship program, bringing his expertise in arts education to the initiative. Quite a transformation, her father observed as she approached. He gestured around the renovated industrial space that now housed both the foundation and the community arts center. Hard to believe this was a warehouse 6 months ago. Vision and execution, Eliza replied. I learned from the best, Charles nodded, accepting the compliment. Their relationship had evolved into something neither could have predicted, not the easy closeness of television, sitcom reconciliations, but a measured respect built on newfound understanding. The promised exchange of recordings had happened gradually over these months, not all at once, but in careful increments. Listening to her father's reflections, his growing recognition of patterns, his halting acknowledgement of mistakes, had given Eliza a more complete picture of the man behind the Bennett patriarch facade. The children's program enrollment has doubled, she told her parents. We're expanding to 3 more schools next semester. I've been visiting the after-school workshops, Margaret said. The difference in those children when they're given space to express their sensitivity instead of suppressing it, ... She shook her head, emotion briefly overwhelming her. It matters. Eliza, what you're creating here matters deeply. The validation, once so desperately sought, now offered freely felt like water in a garden long parched. We've begun a parent education component too, Eliza added, helping families understand and support sensitive children. I've signed up, Diane interjected, joining them. Ted and I both have. We want to do better with Sophia than ... She paused, Meeting Eliza's eyes then was done with you. The acknowledgement hung in the air between them, not an explicit apology, but a recognition of harm and a commitment to change. We're all learning, Eliza said simply as the formal program began. Eliza took her place at the podium, looking out at the gathered crowd family members, business associates, artists, children from the foundation programs. She felt the full circle of her journey. Welcome to the official opening of the Bennett Arts Foundation, she began. This organization was born from a simple but powerful idea. Sensitivity is strength. Perception is power. The ability to feel deeply, to notice what others miss, to process the world in all its complexity. These are gifts to be cultivated, not weaknesses to be overcome. She gestured to the children's artwork surrounding them. These young artists are being taught to trust their perceptions, to value their emotional intelligence, to transform sensitivity into creative power. They're learning what took me decades to understand, that how they naturally experience the world is valid and valuable. Eliza glanced at her family in the front row, her father listening with uncharacteristic openness, her mother radiating quiet pride, her sister nodding in understanding, Sophia watching with bright, perceptive eyes so like her own. The Bennett legacy has always been about building security, she continued. Financial security through the company my father built, emotional security through the family my mother nurtured. Today we expand that legacy to include creative security safe spaces for sensitive people to develop their gifts without apology or doubt. She paused, feeling the weight of the moment, this integration of her most authentic self into the family narrative. 6 months ago, I stood at another podium, uncertain about my place in the Bennett story. Today, I stand before you certain of this. There is room in that story for many ways of being, many forms of intelligence, many kinds of strength. The future we're building in our family, in our company, in this foundation embraces the full spectrum of human gifts. As applause filled the room, Eliza caught Marcus's eye. He gave her a subtle thumbs-up acknowledgement of how far she'd come from the angry, wounded woman building a case against her family. The case was closed now, or perhaps more accurately, transformed. The evidence remained, the recordings, the documentation, the painful memories, but its purpose had evolved from prosecution to education, from judgment to growth. Later, as the event wound down, Eliza found herself alone with Sophia in the exhibition space, studying a particularly striking piece by one of the foundation's young artists. "Aunt Eliza," Sophia said thoughtfully, "Mom told me you used to record family conversations because no one believed how you felt." The direct reference to her documentation project caught Eliza off guard. That's partly true. I needed evidence that my perceptions were real. Sophia nodded, processing this with the seriousness of a child who understood more than adults realized. "I'm glad you don't have to do that anymore," she said simply. "Me too," Eliza replied, studying her niece's profile so like her own at that age. Sensitive and perceptive, but with a confidence Eliza had never possessed. "And I'm glad you won't need to either, because of the foundation." "Because of many things," Eliza said. "The foundation. Your parents learning new ways to support you. Our whole family beginning to see sensitivity differently." Sophia considered this, then asked the question that lay at the heart of everything. Is it really okay to be sensitive? To feel things deeply? To notice what other people miss? Eliza knelt to meet her niece at eye level. "It's more than okay, Sophia. It's magnificent. It's your superpower." The girl's smile radiant with recognition, with the simple joy of being seen and valued, reflected back to Eliza everything she had fought for, everything she had built from the wreckage of old wounds and limiting narratives. "Our superpower," Sophia corrected, taking her hand as they rejoined the remaining guests. Eliza carried that moment with her, this tangible evidence that patterns could change, that sensitivity could be reclaimed as strength, that perception could be honored as power. The Bennett family would never be perfect. Old habits would resurface, old wounds occasionally reopen. The work of transformation was ongoing, imperfect, sometimes painful, but standing in the space she had created, this physical manifestation of her vision, surrounded by family members making their own halting journeys toward understanding Eliza, Bennett finally felt the truth she had been documenting all along. Her sensitivity was not a defect to overcome, but her greatest gift to the world, and no one, not even the Bennetts, could ever convince her otherwise again.